Welcome to Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape podcast, hosted by Dr. Erin Phillips, Director of Cross-Cutting Programs and Acting Senior Director of Research at the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources. The show highlights SER's role in supporting our mission to promote energy-driven economic development in the state of Wyoming.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape. For over a century, the story of coal has been a story of combustion, of fueling the grid and powering the nation. But today, the narrative is shifting. We are entering what many are calling the coal renaissance, where the value of a ton of coal isn't measured just in heat, but in its molecular potential to build the future. Joining us today is someone at the very center of this transformation. Dan Connell is the president of the Innovations Business Unit at Core Natural Resources, the powerhouse formed by the historic merger of Arch and CONSOL. Dan is joining us fresh off a field tour in Gillette, Wyoming, where he explored some of SER's innovative research in coal and engaged in talks about why Wyoming's coal resources are being used for so much more than just energy. So welcome, Dan. We're so excited to have you as a guest today. Will you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. And thanks for having me, Erin. It's great to be here in Wyoming. So my name's Dan Connell. I am currently the president of CONSOL Innovations, which is the innovations-focused arm of Core Natural Resources. I am a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native, born and raised there, still reside in the southern suburbs of Pittsburgh. Went to college at the University of Notre Dame, studied chemical engineering, and actually began my career with CONSOL right out of college as an intern, working in the research and development group. So I've had a more than 20-year career at this point with CONSOL and now Core, and have had the opportunity to wear a number of hats: research and development, marketing, some operations. I've been involved with our export terminal in Baltimore, a new mine that we developed in Itman, West Virginia, and very excited now about my role kind of thinking outside of the box and reimagining the future of what we can do with coal, which, of course, as you know, is a very valuable resource that we're blessed to have a lot of in the United States and right here in Wyoming.
Right. So it sounds like you have a pretty varied background, and you have this extensive background in research and development. How does your technical lens change how you view a traditional mining company compared to someone who might have a strictly financial or operational background?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm a chemical engineer. I think when I think about engineering in general, I think about problem solving. And in the business world, problem solving can also mean rising to the opportunity of meeting new needs, being innovative, and pursuing new opportunities. So my role right now really gives me a lot of bandwidth to do that. Being a chemical engineer, I think I probably have a bit of a different perspective in how I view coal itself as a complex mixture of hydrocarbons, mineral matter, all of which kind of lends itself to a lot of possibilities in terms of how you use that feedstock, obviously in traditional power generation applications, in the metallurgical industry, but also in some of the new innovative coal-to-products work that we're pursuing. So,
yeah, great. I'm excited to talk with you about the coal to products work. But first of all, for our listeners that are unfamiliar with Core Natural Resources, will you tell us a little bit more about the company and how it came to be?
Sure. Yeah, as you mentioned in the introduction, Core was formed in January of 2025 with the merger of CONSOL Energy and Arch Resources. So two powerhouse companies with a long legacy in the coal mining business in the United States. Today, Core is unique, I would say, in that we are truly a national coal producer. So we have major operations in the eastern U.S. and the western U.S. We have underground mining operations. We have surface mining operations. And we sell our coal domestically and into the export markets in meaningful quantities, into thermal end-use applications, industrial end-use applications, and metallurgical applications. So we have a very broad coverage of the coal space, and for me as an innovator, that gives me an exciting, broad platform of opportunities to build from.
Yeah, definitely a lot of exciting opportunities right now. So how did that merger between Arch and CONSOL kind of allow for new opportunities to pursue projects that may have been impossible for either entity alone?
Sure. I think part of it is that combination of assets that neither company fully had access to. Working for CONSOL, we had a rich history of engaging in research and development. CONSOL actually had a research and development division as early as the 1940s, which was pretty unique among coal mining companies in the United States. And as I said, that's where I joined the company. And up until today, we've kind of maintained that focus on innovation and engaging in projects that might be a little bit downstream of where a typical mining company would draw the boundary on its business plan. So that was a unique thing that CONSOL brought to the table. But coming from CONSOL, I will tell you, we had nothing going on west of the Mississippi River prior to the merger. And unlocking the ability to engage in opportunities in the Powder River Basin right here in Wyoming. You're talking different coal chemistry, subbituminous coal versus the bituminous coal feedstocks that we have worked with in the East, different economic profile to mining PRB coal, different chemical properties in that coal. So really exciting to be able to broaden the horizons as we work to optimize our technology platform and have a much broader spectrum of opportunities to pursue.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about this coal to products research. Much of the work that you're doing aligns with what we're doing here at the School of Energy Resources. And you just spent a day at the Wyoming Innovations Center and the field sites for our Center for Carbon Capture and Conversion, or our 4Cs, which is dedicated to finding alternative uses for Wyoming coal. Up at the Wyoming Innovations Center, our team is constructing a demonstration plant that converts Wyoming coal into new feedstocks that can then be used to create a suite of coal-derived products. After seeing the pilot plant and the pyrolysis units in person, what strikes you most about the scale of the work that's happening up in Gillette?
I guess in one word, I would say impressive, and especially impressive coming from a university-led project. And one thing that struck me in my interactions with UW is that I would say you all are doing something very similar to what I'm trying to do within CORE, which is operate kind of right on that frontier of opportunity where the traditional comfort zone ends and the spirit of innovation and thinking outside of the box and progressively begins. And I think that demonstration plan is great evidence of that, taking on kind of a technical readiness level within the R&D spectrum that's probably outside of most universities' comfort zones, but obviously a critical path in scaling up a technology from the lab to commercial reality. I also think that demonstration unit is what we need to see in the coal to product space. A lot of people talk about coal to products. Very few of us are doing it at scale. And the quality of construction of that site, the cleanliness of the site, it's a very professionally done facility, and I'm very excited to see first production as it starts up middle of this year.
Yeah, I'm really glad you got a chance to visit up there, and kudos to Trina Pfeiffer and her entire team at the 4Cs here at SER. They've been just doing such incredible work up there. So the 4Cs is working on everything from carbon-derived bricks to asphalt to soil amendments. Which of these non-thermal products do you think is the closest to reaching a commercial tipping point where we might see it in the private sector, and which one are you the most excited about?
Sure. No, and I would say in general, the portfolio of technologies being developed here at UW aligns pretty well with the portfolio that we're focusing on at CORE in our innovations group. And building products, I would say, building and infrastructure products is a big focus for both of us. When you look at coal to products, oftentimes the first question that is asked is, how many tons of coal will this use? Mm-hmm. And many of the coal to products opportunities, I would say, end up being more of a value play than a volume play. But building an infrastructure products is one of the few areas that's probably an exception to that. You look at things like concrete, asphalt. These are materials that are used in larger quantities. It's hard to rival the scale of the coal industry globally at more than 8 billion tons a year of production. Very few things do that. But some of the building product raw materials are definitely in that large volume class. So it's exciting to see work being done on that, especially using a very abundant, low-cost resource like PRB coal. And I would say that theme is what excites me the most. Judging from kind of the scale-up efforts, it's obvious that char has kind of entered that demonstration scale first, I would say, with solvent extraction for asphalt binder production kind of hot on its heels. So I think just purely looking at the technology scale-up efforts, those opportunities, and I know char is being considered for everything ranging from soil amendments to building product filler material or aggregate additive type material. But those opportunities, I think, are ripe for being proven out using the demonstration facility up in Gillette and then taking the next step, hopefully, into commercialization.
Yeah. Yeah, these high volume uses are really exciting considering all of the coal we have in the Powder River Basin.
For sure.
Well, you touched on this a little bit, but CORE has its own innovation center in West Virginia. So how do you look at university-led research like that going on at the center in West Virginia and here at UW when deciding where to put private investment for future products?
Yeah, we have a very positive track record of collaborating with universities on developing and scaling up technologies. I like to think of this of kind of each party playing where they shine the best. So universities, I feel like in that mid-TRL level, 3, 4, 5, are often great partners to take the lead on a project, tap into resources, tap into technical expertise that's needed to really perfect a technology, get material properties and performance characteristics dialed in, maybe take those first steps into pilot or small demonstration scale up, and then the industry partner involved at those steps, but really starts to take command as technologies break into the higher TRLs and get ready to do large-scale demos and enter the market. That's been a really effective model. We have a deckboard product that in the East that we've worked with Ohio University actually to develop, and started relatively low TRL as a concept in a lab, and we're now in the process still engaged with the university, but in more of a licensing way and working to install the first commercial scale production line to take that product to market. So it's a model that's worked and that we look to replicate in interactions with universities like UW. But in that first engagement, I would say the main thing I'm looking for is this an opportunity that has a path to commercial viability? Have the preliminary economics been at least considered? Don't have to be ironclad or a slam dunk out of the gate, but is that part of the thought process that's led to this concept? And then are we pursuing a technology because it's the right fit for the application, as opposed to forcing, I want to use coal, so I'm going to force it into this application, where maybe it doesn't offer any technical or economic advantages. That's not a situation that we want to get into.
Right.
So in terms of initial screens, I would say those are kind of two of the really critical ones when we're looking to engage.
Right. You want to set yourself up for success.
For sure.
Well, I do want to talk about some of these other really interesting products. We hear a lot about coal-derived carbon foam and aerospace composites. Will you talk about why coal's molecular structure makes it valuable for the tech industry rather than just a fuel source?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, coal is a very interesting resource. It's really a complex mixture when you think about it, and not all coals are created equal. So to cite a really specific example of that, in the East we have caking coals, many of which are metallurgical coals, but these are bituminous coals that when they're heated in the absence of oxygen, they actually undergo a phase transformation and become thermoplastic, so kind of fluid. So in the aerospace carbon foam application, we're taking one of those metallurgical coals and using it to produce a rigid, high-strength, lightweight carbon foam. So it kind of goes through that phase transformation, resolidifies into this rigid foam that is highly temperature tolerant, has a very low coefficient of thermal expansion when it's heated, is strong, and can be machined to very tight tolerances. And those properties make it perfect for making the molds that are used to produce carbon fiber composite aerospace parts. So those parts need to be cured at high temperatures to very tight tolerances. Because you can machine the foam to very tight tolerances and heat it up without having it expand, it's a perfect substrate material for producing those parts. And we've, starting with metallurgical coal, been able to take advantage of those characteristics of this particular type of coal to commercialize that application and then build a business around it. So we now not only mine the coal, we make the foam, we make the tools, we make the aerospace parts, and we're starting to put the parts together into aerospace assemblies, kind of all seeded with that initial coal property that was of interest and a good fit for the technology. So that's one example. In the East, you also look at the chemistry of coal. It can be modified to interact with different materials. So a lot of the applications that we're looking at for PRB coal may include compositing it with another material, where material interactions are important to the ultimate performance of the end-use product. Coal also contains impurities. Those have caused challenges at times from an environmental perspective and need to be mitigated in power generation applications. But right now, a lot of folks, including ourselves and UW, are looking at coal as a source of things like rare earth elements and critical minerals, which are found in certain places above crustal abundance in coal deposits. So unique material, highly variable, and provides a great foundation to work with in kind of innovating and saying, how can we extract or modify or convert to meet the needs of an application?
Yeah, really interesting work going on. So in the carbon foam and aerospace applications, that's considered more high value versus high volume uses? Is that right?
Exactly. Okay. And I would say a lot of what we do with the eastern U.S. coals, they're more expensive coals to mine, generally underground mined coals, often selling into markets that command higher pricing, like the metallurgical market. So much better suited, I would say, for the higher value, lower volume applications versus the opportunities we're looking at in the PRB, which are, I'd say, a little bit the opposite.
Yep. Yeah. Well, one other really neat application I want to talk about here is some of your work in cooling visors for Olympic athletes. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about how you go from a lump of coal to a high performance wearable for world-class athletes.
Yeah, so carbon is unique in that you can tailor it to a variety of different applications. So you look at something like our standard carbon foam product, it's thermally insulating. You look at a graphitic version of a carbon foam, and it can be thermally conductive. And we make both versions of carbon foam. So it's actually the graphitic foam that is used in these wearables, which are made by a company called Ohmius. And they produce cooling headbands, essentially, that use a graphitic material to draw heat away from the athlete's forehead. And you are correct. At the Paris Olympics, the winner of the women's marathon and then two of the other medalists out of the 6 between women's and men's were actually wearing these cooling visors during the Olympic marathon, which is pretty neat stage to see your product featured on. It was one of Time Magazine's top 200 inventions of that year, so pretty cool. That material is actually made from a pitch that can be derived from either petroleum or coal. And one of the unique opportunities that we're pursuing right now with UW is actually looking at ways to make that pitch from Powder River Basin coal, which is not where it currently comes from, but we're working on it as we speak. So very exciting. Well,
we will be keeping our eyes out at the next Olympics.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, you talked a little bit about rare earth elements and critical minerals. So, in addition to coal to products, there's also this national push for domestic supply chains and critical minerals. And how is CORE looking at the extraction of rare earth elements and critical minerals both as a co-product of traditional mining?
Yeah, we're looking at REEs and CMs both at our eastern mining operations and our western mining operations here in the PRB. And I would say coal in general is an unconventional source of REEs and CMs. So this is kind of a value add play for us. And we look at it as such. So a material that we're already producing, and the key here is in great quantities. So when we look at the east, we operate what's called the Pennsylvania Mining Complex. It's the largest underground coal mining complex in the United States. Has the capacity to do around 27 million tons per year of coal from underground longwall mining. And it produces a lot of tailings that are currently disposed of in an impoundment. And that's a very large volume, already mined waste stream that's very fine and easily accessible, and is kind of the target of our REECM work in the East. Because we're starting with, yes, enriched versus crustal abundance, but maybe lower concentrations than you would find in a conventional REECM reserve, having that volume and the economics around it to help out with the initial stages of accessing and extracting the material is key. Similarly, in the PRB, we operate Black Thunder and Coal Creek, which is kind of the second largest mining complex here in the PRB. And again, we're producing, on the order of 50-ish million tons a year of coal product from that mine, obviously moving a lot of material in the process of mining the coal as well. And it's been well demonstrated. UW has published a paper on it recently that in the PRB, we tend to see boundary enrichment of REEs kind of at the margins of the coal seam. And the work that we've done so far in partnership with UW has shown that we see that same behavior at Black Thunder and Coal Creek. So we have a very focused effort going on right now to look at how we might be able to capitalize on that and develop kind of we'll say mining, concentrating, extracting approach that takes advantage of those elevated concentrations that we see in the operation that's already permitted, already operating, and gives us a big jump start over developing a greenfield mining project.
Right. Yeah. So important to think about those existing waste streams and the existing infrastructure that we already have when we're talking about critical minerals. And sure. I also want to give a shout out here to the minerals team and the Center for Economic Geology Research here at SER for all the work that they've been doing in really characterizing those enrichments in the Powder River Basin.
Yeah, and I would echo that. Tyler, Cole, Dobbin, great to work with.
Yep. And Bob.
And Bob, yes.
Yep. All right. Well, I want to change gears here a little bit and talk about public interest and changing the narrative. How do you think the coal to products conversation changes the narrative around coal and carbon to one that considers coal as a natural resource with the possibility for these new technology innovations and applications?
Yeah, I think the conversation is growing. And I've been involved, so CONSOL, formerly and now CORE, has had a public awareness campaign going on for the last couple of years called Not So Fast initially, and then more recently we're calling it the Coal Hard Truth campaign. But trying to get the word out about the continued role that coal plays in providing quality of life, not only here in the U.S., but around the world, and the risks of being too quick to dismiss coal at a time when coal demand is at an all-time high. And through that campaign, we've woven in a lot of the narrative around the innovative work that we're doing in the coal to product space and kind of non-traditional uses of coal for cutting-edge applications. And I can tell you that that's an attention grabber. Not that the other narrative is unimportant, it's very important, but when you're reaching out to an audience that maybe has written off coal as something that was important yesterday but isn't important today or tomorrow, surprising them with an application like aerospace or battery materials draws them into the broader conversation around our natural resources, their abundance, and how we use them most optimally and sustainably going forward. So it's an important part of the coal dialogue, and one that I hope that we can continue to build upon. I would also say the work that UW is doing at Gillette and that we're doing with our commercial manufacturing activities, where we're not only talking about, coal can be used for all of these different things. We're doing it. I mean, we've got meaningful scale facilities, a demonstration facility, a commercial facility, putting this to practice, producing real products that ultimately are going into real applications and markets, provides proof that this isn't a visionary story. It can be a reality, and very excited to be working to keep expanding that opportunity set.
Yeah. So important, too, to think about how this fits into communities' culture and economics and workforce development. All right, Dan, so you touched on the Coal Hard Truth campaign, which I think is a great name. For a listener who only associates coal with the 19th century industrial revolution, talk a little bit about the coal renaissance of 2026 and what can the coal industry and others do to build on this opportunity that we have right now?
Yeah, I think we're generating a lot of momentum, as I mentioned, and I would encourage you to visit thecoalhardtruth.com to check out the campaign and what we've done so far. But to me, the coal industry traditionally has produced a commodity, right? And I'd say our marketing reach has been mostly directed toward sales to traditional end users that are focused on making sure we have electricity and infrastructure to support humankind, which is a very noble thing, but maybe an area that doesn't lead to broader marketing outreach. So I think right now the challenge for the coal industry is to get outside of our comfort zone and the traditional channels and conferences and publications that are used to listening to our story and embracing our story, and really speak to the people that need to be better informed and won over to the kind of the future possibilities with coal. And a lot of the innovative work, I think, as I mentioned, is a great hook for at least captivating those audiences enough so that they will listen to the broader message. I would emphasize that our schools, starting with elementary schools and going all the way through academia, are a critical target audience for us because, yes, coal remains vital to providing quality of life to people all around the world. But if we don't educate kind of the next generation of scientists, engineers, business leaders, decision makers about the role that coal plays today and the possibilities for what coal can do tomorrow, we're going to miss out on an opportunity to make optimal use of this resource. So it's a critical time in the evolution of our industry. We're kind of at that mature point in the business cycle where you either kind of ride the wave or you reinvent yourself, and Renaissance is kind of all about reinvention, and my personal take is that we seize the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, to kind of follow along on the education and workforce development thoughts, for University of Wyoming students who might be listening, many of whom may have family in the mining industry, what is one skill that they should be learning today to be ready for success in this industry?
Yeah, that's a hard question because skill sets are constantly evolving, especially with the era of AI upon us here. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll talk about 3 that stand out to me. The first one would be my answer regardless of which year you asked me this, and that's communication. Mm-hmm. And kind of ties to the public awareness messaging that we just talked about. But in any aspect of your career, and I feel what's differentiated me and allowed me to progress in my career, the ability to communicate, to sell an idea, get buy-in, and rally a team to execute has always been critical and will remain critical. And in particular, if you're studying a technical discipline, sometimes communication is outside of your comfort zone initially. I'd say put yourself in those uncomfortable situations now and get good at it, because it truly can be a differentiator for you as you get into your career. I mentioned AI, and I think AI it's scary in a lot of ways, but it's a tremendous opportunity in a lot of other ways. And you look at the mining process, and it's essentially a manufacturing process with a lot more unpredictability because you're dealing with kind of what Mother Nature gave you as a feedstock. And it's then a serial progression of extracting and transporting and processing and utilizing a natural resource, and lots of data collection, data analysis, and certainly AI, ML type opportunities that have not been fully exploited in the industry. So I think if you come in strong and with an innovative mind around how you can use those tools to create efficiencies and get ahead, that's a big opportunity as well. And then finally, I'd say just the ability to work with your hands and get out and do things. And I think engineers that are able to be effective on the floor of the plant or in the mine, as well as behind their computer, have a very valuable combination of skills that can go a long way. So sorry, that wasn't just one, but...
Nope, that's okay. We need varied skills these days, but that's great advice.
And even pick one or two of those to focus on if they're in your comfort zone and go all in. And I think that'll be a winning solution.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. We always like to end with a gem about Wyoming. So what is your favorite place to visit in Wyoming, or your favorite activity here in Wyoming?
Yeah, it's really hard to pick a favorite place in Wyoming because there are so many great ones. So I'll go with activity, which is going on a hike in a new location where I've never been. And, thinking back through my Wyoming travels, starting with Yellowstone, going to the Tetons, going to Devil's Tower, on this trip doing the Turtle Rock hike. Just so many hidden treasures in the state, especially if you like the outdoors, which I do. So I love soaking that in and experiencing new places.
Great. Yeah, so many new places to explore in Wyoming. So thanks again, and thank you to our listeners, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape, the podcast that highlights the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. You can expect a new episode of Energy Frontier every other Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.